Captain Taeyun stared out at the stars through the thick glass of Outpost Epsilon's observation deck. His hands gripped the railing tightly as he watched the Vraxian ships appear one by one. They looked like dark insects against the bright backdrop of the nearby nebula, their hulls reflecting purple and blue light. "They're still coming," he said quietly. Admiral Kim stepped beside him, her face showing no emotion though her eyes betrayed her concern. She wore the crisp blue uniform of the Galactic Alliance, an organization barely 2 years old. Outpost Epsilon was their furthest station from the core worlds, placed here specifically to monitor this sector of space. "How many defenders do we have?" she asked. Taeyun consulted his datapad. 17 species represented among our personnel. 800 total. He paused. Most are scientists, engineers, and support staff, not fighters. Admiral Kim nodded slowly, taking in the information. "And the Vraxians?" "At least 12,000, based on our scans. Maybe more." The Vraxians were a relatively new threat. They operated as a collective, a hive mind species that moved and fought as one. Their ships, their soldiers, their weapons, all connected through their commanders. Admiral Kim closed her eyes briefly, as if searching for an answer in darkness. When she opened them again, they held a determined glint. "Deploy the human contingent," she ordered. Taeyun looked surprised. "The snipers? All 5 of them?" "All 5, she confirmed. 3 hours later, Staff Sergeant Junho lay on his stomach on a jagged cliff overlooking the wide valley that led to the outpost. The position gave him a clear view of the approach route the Vraxians would have to take. His rifle, a specialized piece of human engineering, was set up before him, its barrel steady on its mount. 4 other humans had taken similar positions on other cliffs surrounding the valley. They communicated through short, encrypted bursts of data, coordinating their plan. Back at the outpost, the Tellurian ambassador stood next to Admiral Kim in the command center. His insect-like features couldn't express human emotions, but his rapidly clicking mandibles betrayed his nervousness. "Human soldiers?" he questioned. "So few. You send 5 against thousands." Several other alien representatives murmured in agreement. The decision seemed foolish, perhaps even suicidal. Admiral Kim's lips curved in a slight smile. "Watch," was all she said. On the surveillance screens, they could see the Vraxian ground forces begin to march through the valley. They moved in perfect unison, thousands of soldier drones following invisible commands from their hive commanders. These commanders rode on elevated platforms above the troops, their larger bodies and distinctive red markings making them visible even from a distance. Through his scope, Junho focused on the lead commander. He calculated distance, wind speed, atmospheric pressure, and the slight gravitational variances of this moon. His breathing slowed. His heartbeat steadied. He took one long, controlled breath, held it, and gently squeezed the trigger. 5 kilometers away, the first commander's head exploded in a spray of green fluid. The platform toppled, sending the body crashing into the ranks below. Before the Vraxian forces could process what had happened, 4 more shots rang out across the valley. 4 more commanders fell, each one targeted by a different human sniper. In the command center, the alien representatives watched in stunned silence as the screen showed the Vraxian army falling into disarray. Without their commanders to direct the hive mind, the soldiers began moving erratically. Some stopped completely. Others ran in circles. Many began attacking each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. "What's happening to them?" asked a reptilian delegate. "The Vraxians function as a collective," Admiral Kim explained. "Their commanders coordinate their actions. Without them, the soldiers have no direction." By sunset, the Vraxian forces had completely fallen apart. What had been an organized army was now a scattered, confused mess. Alliance security teams moved in to round up the disoriented soldiers who now posed no threat. Later that night, as the outposts celebrated their unexpected victory, the Tellurian ambassador approached Admiral Kim in the mess hall. "Those humans," he said, mandibles moving slowly in thought. "How did they hit targets at such distance? My people have excellent vision, yet even we could not attempt such shots." Admiral Kim took a sip from her cup before answering. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators on a world with extreme environmental variation. They learned patience, precision, and how to kill from a distance long before they developed space travel." She glanced across the room where the 5 snipers sat together, quietly eating their meal as if they hadn't just saved the outpost from certain destruction. "That," she continued, "is why human snipers will soon be feared across the galaxy. Today was just the beginning." The Tellurian's compound eyes followed her gaze to the humans. For the first time, he looked at the small, seemingly unremarkable species with something new in his posture. Respect mingled with the first hints of fear. Dr. Donghae pushed his glasses up his nose as he carefully adjusted the sensors monitoring the human in the test chamber. Through the thick observation window, Master Sergeant Haijin lay perfectly still on a shooting platform. Her eye remained fixed to the scope of her training rifle, her body showing no signs of discomfort despite having maintained the same position for over 27 hours. "Remarkable," Dr. Donghae whispered to his colleague. "Truly remarkable." Dr. Nari, a tall Meridian scientist with pale blue skin and elongated limbs, leaned closer to the window. The Meridians were known across the galaxy for their scientific minds, but even she seemed impressed by what they were witnessing. "No movement for 27 hours, she noted, her 4 fingers tapping on her datapad. "No other sentient species we've studied can maintain such stillness for extended periods. The combination of their breathing control, heart rate regulation, and patience is unprecedented." Dr. Donghae nodded, checking the vital sign monitors. "Her heart rate hasn't changed more than 3 beats per minute since we started. And look at her brain activity. Fully alert, fully focused. Their visual acuity is nothing special," Dr. Neri observed. "Actually quite poor compared to many species. Yet they can spot and track movement better than species with 4 eyes or compound vision." She paused. "It's their processing. They notice patterns where others see only chaos." The 2 scientists were part of the Galactic Alliance's Special Research Division, tasked with understanding what made human snipers so effective. After the Battle of Outpost Epsilon, where 5 human snipers defeated a Vraxian force of thousands, interest in human capabilities had skyrocketed. "Do you think it's genetic?" Dr. Donghae asked. Dr. Neri shook her head. "Not entirely. Their biology is part of it. The way their eyes connect to their brains, their manual dexterity, their endurance. But much is learned. They train constantly." In the chamber, Haijin finally moved, sitting up slowly after Dr. Donghae signaled the end of the test. She stretched her limbs methodically, showing no signs of stiffness despite her long stillness. "How do you feel?" Dr. Donghae asked through the intercom. "Fine," Haijin replied simply. "Could have gone longer if needed." 2 weeks later, Haijin found herself in very different surroundings. The planet Glacius lived up to its name, a frozen world of endless ice plains and howling blizzards. Temperature regularly dropped to levels that would kill most species in minutes. Haijin lay beneath a special thermal blanket designed to mask her heat signature while providing minimal warmth. Snow had accumulated on her back over the past 3 days, forming a natural camouflage. Her rifle, specially designed for extreme cold, rested before her, its barrel pointing toward a small bunker 2 kilometers away. The rebel Krell general had taken refuge on Glacius, specifically because the harsh conditions made conventional military operations impossible. Alliance ships couldn't land in the constant storms, and most species couldn't survive the cold long enough to mount an assault. But humans could endure. Haijin had been inserted by drop pod 3 days earlier, landing 5 kilometers from her current position. She had crawled the entire distance, moving only when the blizzards were at their strongest to mask her approach. For the past 36 hours, she had remained completely still, watching the bunker entrance. Intelligence suggested the general would have to personally reset the facility's communications array, which had been damaged in a previous Alliance strike. The blizzard intensified, reducing visibility to near zero for most eyes. But Hyjin had been trained to see patterns. The slight difference between swirling snow and a moving figure, the subtle change in shadows that indicated an opening door. There it was, the bunker hatch sliding open. A tall Krell figure emerged, moving quickly toward the communications array on the roof. The general was visible for only 7 seconds. One shot was all she needed. The rifle made almost no sound, the report swallowed by the howling wind. Through her scope, Hyjin watched the general collapse. Mission complete. 6 hours later, Alliance forces had secured the bunker and the remaining rebels had surrendered. The storm had finally abated enough to allow ships to land. The Meridian commander, General Pax, found Hyjin in the makeshift medical tent where she was warming up. "How?" he asked, his elongated blue face showing confusion. "How did you make that shot? Our calculations show the atmospheric distortion alone should have made it impossible. Add the blizzard conditions, the extreme cold affecting the rifle mechanisms, the wind variables." Hyjin looked up at the tall alien. She shrugged slightly. "We learned to kill from a distance before we learned to travel between stars," she said simply. "It's what humans do." The story of what happened on Glacius spread quickly through Alliance communications. Soon it was joined by other reports. A human sniper on Terex Prime, who eliminated an entire pirate leadership during a dust storm. 3 human snipers who held a mountain pass against hundreds on Vega Colony. A single human who prevented an assassination on Centauri Station with a shot that curved around a structural support. By the end of the month, 3 separate insurrections on frontier worlds surrendered upon merely hearing rumors that human snipers had been deployed to their systems. No shots needed to be fired. The reputation alone was enough. In his laboratory, Dr. Donghe reviewed the data from their tests, still trying to understand what made humans so special. He looked up as Dr. Nari entered. "I think I understand now," she said, setting down her datapad. "It's not just physical. It's psychological. Humans have a predator's mind combined with a mathematician's precision. They don't just shoot, they hunt." Dr. Donghe nodded slowly. Across the galaxy, a new understanding was emerging. Human snipers weren't just soldiers with good aim. They were something the galaxy had never seen before, and something it now deeply feared. Lieutenant Minho sat motionless in the preparation chamber as technicians worked around him. Their hands moved quickly, attaching sensors to his temples and securing the neural interface to the base of his skull. The small device hummed softly as it connected with his brain, creating a direct link between his thoughts and the specialized optical system built into his helmet. "All systems optimal," reported the lead technician, stepping back. "Neural sync at 98%. That's the highest we've seen." Commander Sunwoo entered the room, his face serious. Though only in his 40s, his hair had gone completely gray during the past year of conflict with the Krell Empire. He carried a holographic projector which he set on the table before Minho. "Final briefing," Sunwoo said. Activating the device, a 3-dimensional image of a massive fortress appeared, rotating slowly to show all angles. It sat atop a mountain, its walls seemingly growing out of the rocky landscape itself. Defense turrets dotted the structure, and a shimmering field indicated the presence of energy shields. "The Krell stronghold has 19 layers of security," explained Sunwoo, his finger moving through the hologram to highlight different systems. "Motion sensors, heat detectors, sound amplifiers, atmospheric composition monitors, light distortion fields, pheromone sniffers, and more we probably don't know about." Minho studied the fortress carefully, his enhanced eyes absorbing every detail. "Their defense is impressive. It's designed to be impenetrable," Sunwoo agreed. "But they have a blind spot, one they don't know about because no other species can exploit it." He zoomed the hologram to focus on the uppermost level of the fortress, Warlord Vrex's private chambers. The Krell evolved on a world with no aerial predators. Their eyes are positioned for horizontal threat detection. They rarely look up. Sunwoo pointed to a small opening near the top of the structure. This ventilation port has 7 layers of energy shields, but they're calibrated to stop physical objects and energy weapons, not light. From the right angle, with the right specialized round, a shot could pass through. Minho nodded, taking in the information. "I'll have 1 shot." "1 shot," Sunwoo confirmed. "But first you need to reach the position. The approach is watched by automated systems. Any vehicle would be detected immediately." "I won't need a vehicle," Minho said. 12 hours later, a small drop pod silently descended through the atmosphere of Krell Prime. Using minimal thrusters and stealth technology, it landed 20 kilometers from the fortress, in a deep ravine where the surrounding rocks masked its thermal signature. Minho emerged wearing a specialized suit that adapted to match the color and texture of its surroundings. The neural interface connected to his optical system allowed him to see heat signatures, movement patterns, and even the subtle distortions created by energy fields. For the first day, he moved only at night, covering 10 kilometers by staying in shadows and ravines. When dawn approached, he found a small crevice in the rocks and became completely still. His suit hardened around him, taking on the exact appearance of the surrounding stone. A Krell patrol passed within 3 meters of his position. Their scanning devices swept over him, but the combination of his suit's technology and his complete stillness kept him undetected. Humans had learned to remain motionless in ways that confused even the most advanced sensors. On the second day, Minho reached the base of the mountain where the fortress stood. Now came the most difficult part. The remaining 10 kilometers would be up the steep, rocky face where cover was minimal. He would need to move during daylight, millimeter by millimeter, so slowly that even the sophisticated Krell motion detectors would register his movement as nothing more than the natural shifting of rocks in the wind. Inside his suit, specialized systems managed his bodily waste. He took water through a filtration tube that drew moisture from the air. He had consumed no food since departure and would not until mission completion. His body had been conditioned to operate efficiently on stored energy. By the 3rd day, Minho had reached his final position, a small outcropping 2 kilometers from the fortress that provided a direct line of sight to Warlord Vrex's chambers. The distance was extreme, but within the capabilities of his specialized rifle and his enhanced human skills. He lay perfectly still as his rifle assembled itself from components hidden throughout his suit. The weapon contained no metal or energy cells that might trigger fortress sensors. Instead, it used compressed air and chemical propellants, technology considered primitive by galactic standards, but effective for this purpose. Inside the fortress, Warlord Vrex moved confidently through his private chambers. 7 layers of energy shields protected him, along with physical walls of a material stronger than steel. His personal guards, the elite of Krell society, stood ready outside his door. Sensors constantly monitored for any approach, any projectile, any energy buildup that might indicate an attack. Vrex believed himself untouchable. His species had evolved heightened senses. They could detect thermal signatures from kilometers away, notice movement no matter how slight, even smell the fear pheromones produced by most species under stress. But they never looked up. Through his enhanced scope, Minho watched the warlord's movements. The neural interface allowed him to calculate distance, wind speed, gravitational pull, atmospheric density, and the refractive properties of the energy shields. All these calculations happened instantly in his mind, transmitted through the interface to his targeting system. Minho's finger moved to the trigger. He took 1 breath, held it, and fired. The specialized round, made of a crystalline material that allowed light to pass through it, moved at tremendous speed. It passed through the 7 layers of energy shields, the shields registering only a slight light distortion, nothing worth triggering alarms. It continued through the reinforced window, the material designed to stop energy weapons but vulnerable to this particular physical composition. The round found its mark. Warlord Vrex fell instantly. For 3 seconds, Nothing happened. Then alarms blared throughout the fortress. Guards rushed into the warlord's chambers to find him dead, a small perfect hole through his head. The shields were intact. The sensors had detected nothing. It seemed impossible. By the time the fortress realized what had happened, Minho was already moving, sliding down the mountain face using natural crevices. His rifle had disassembled itself, the components once again hidden within his suit. 6 hours later, he reached his extraction point. A stealth shuttle broke atmosphere just long enough to retrieve him before disappearing again into space. In the aftermath, Alliance intelligence intercepted frantic communications between Krell command centers. Analysis showed a new standing order being distributed to all Krell forces. If humans are detected, particularly lone humans with long-range weapons, immediate evacuation is advised. When Minho returned to Alliance headquarters, Commander Sunwoo met him at the landing bay. "Mission successful," Minho reported simply. Sunwoo nodded. "More than you know. The Krell have pulled back from 3 disputed systems already. They're terrified." He handed Minho a datapad. "New intelligence reports they're developing helmets that force their soldiers to look up regularly." Minho allowed himself a small smile. "They'll adapt. We'll adapt faster." The Ghost Protocol had begun. Throughout the galaxy, a new type of warfare was emerging, one where the mere possibility of a human sniper was enough to change military strategy, one where a single shot could accomplish what fleets of warships could not. The Emergency Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance headquarters fell silent as General Ji-hoon stepped to the central platform. The large circular room held representatives from 37 species, all united in concern. A holographic display above the platform showed the wreckage of Alliance ships drifting in the emptiness of space, the Third Fleet lost in as many weeks. "The Shidari are using technology we cannot counter," General Ji-hoon said, his voice grave. The aging general's uniform bore the scars of previous conflicts, but none had troubled him like this one. Their cloaking devices bend light around their ships, making them completely invisible to our sensors and our eyes. A reptilian delegate hissed in frustration. "How can we fight what we cannot see?" "3 fleets destroyed," called another voice. "Thousands of lives lost. We must withdraw from the sector entirely." General Ji-hoon raised his hand for silence. "We have discovered something unexpected." He nodded to his aide, who adjusted the holographic display. Now it showed a recording from a damaged Alliance ship. The video showed only stars and empty space, but a human crew member was pointing excitedly at seemingly nothing. "Our sensors detected nothing," Ji-hoon explained, "but we've noticed a pattern." Human crew members reported something not right about the stars moments before attacks. "We've analyzed these reports and determined that humans can spot the minute distortions the Shidari cloaking creates against natural star patterns." Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Meridian scientist representative leaned forward with interest. "How is this possible?" "Human visual acuity is unremarkable." "Pattern recognition," Ji-hoon replied. "Humans evolved watching the stars, learning to recognize constellations, tracking subtle changes in the night sky. Their brains process these patterns subconsciously. They notice when stars don't look quite right, even if they can't explain why." The council debated for hours. Some dismissed the idea as desperate fantasy. Others saw it as their only hope. In the end, they approved General Ji-hoon's plan. Operation Shadow. 20 human snipers, the best in the Alliance, were deployed in specially designed pods throughout the disputed sector. These pods, barely larger than a human body, contained minimal life support and communications equipment. Their small size made them nearly impossible to detect, especially when powered down to minimal functions. Corporal Juwu floated in her pod at the edge of the Caladan system, where intelligence suggested the Shidari might strike next. Her pod rotated slowly, giving her a complete view of the star field around her. The only sound was her own breathing and the occasional soft peep of equipment. The pod contained no entertainment systems, no distractions. For the past 16 hours, She had simply watched space, scanning the stars for anything unusual. A normal person would have gone mad with boredom, but Juwu, like all human snipers, had been trained to embrace stillness and patience. Her rifle was unlike any conventional weapon. It fired specialized marker rounds, crystalline shells containing a compound developed specifically for this mission. The compound would adhere to the Shidari cloaking fields, making the invisible visible. Hour after hour passed. Juwu maintained her vigilance, her eyes constantly moving across the starscape, searching for any anomaly. She had memorized the star patterns in this sector, knowing exactly how they should appear. Then, a flicker, so subtle that most would miss it. A distant star briefly dimmed, then brightened again. Not enough to trigger any sensor alarm, just the slightest distortion of light. Juwu's heart rate remained steady as she focused on that area of space. There it was again. The stars behind whatever was out there didn't look quite right. The patterns were subtly wrong, like a painting where the artist had made a small mistake. She raised her rifle and adjusted its specialized scope. Her neural interface connected with the targeting system, allowing her to mark the area where she sensed the distortion. The rifle hummed softly as it prepared to fire. Juwu transmitted encoded coordinates to Alliance Command. Possible contact. Marking now. She pulled the trigger. The rifle made barely a sound as it launched its payload into seemingly empty space. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a shape began to appear against the blackness. The marker compound spread across the surface of the cloaking field, revealing the outline of a massive Shidari warship. And it wasn't alone. As Juwu watched, she fired more markers, revealing ship after ship. An entire Shidari fleet had been hiding in plain sight, preparing to ambush the Alliance supply routes. Within minutes of her transmission, Alliance ships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons already targeting the now visible Shidari vessels. The ambushers became the ambushed. The battle was swift and decisive. Without their invisibility advantage, the Shidari ships fell quickly to Alliance weapons. Several were captured intact, their crews taken prisoner. Aboard the Alliance flagship, General Ji-hoon personally interrogated a captured Shidari commander. The alien's exoskeleton clicked nervously as it faced the human general. "How did you see us?" The Shidari hissed, its compound eyes reflecting the harsh lighting of the interrogation room. "Our cloaking technology is perfect. No sensors can detect it." General Ji-hoon smiled slightly. "We didn't use sensors." "Impossible," the Shidari insisted. "No species can see through our cloaking." "We didn't see through it," Ji-hoon explained. "Humans simply noticed that something wasn't right about the stars behind you. We've been watching the stars since before we could reach them, learning their patterns, understanding their movements. Your cloaking may bend light, but it doesn't do it perfectly." The Shidari commander's mandibles clicked rapidly in distress. "Single humans, in space, watching for us." "Exactly," Ji-hoon said. "And now they're watching everywhere." This was no exaggeration. Following the success of Operation Shadow, the Alliance deployed hundreds of human snipers in pods throughout contested space. Most would never fire a shot. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough. News of the strategy spread quickly through Shidari communication channels. Their commanders became increasingly paranoid, ordering constant course changes and limiting their use of cloaking technology. Every unexplained equipment failure, every strange sensor reading, every unexpected communication issue was attributed to possible human sniper activity. In strategy sessions across enemy territory, Shidari leaders found themselves looking nervously out viewports, wondering if human eyes were watching them at that very moment. Even in their most secure bases, they felt exposed. They could be anywhere. One Shidari general chittered to his staff. "Floating in space, hiding on moons, concealed on our own ships. How do we fight an enemy we cannot detect? Who can detect us?" The psychological impact was devastating. Shidari ships began traveling in large defensive formations, sacrificing their stealth advantage for perceived safety in numbers. Some captains refused to enter certain sectors entirely, claiming they were washed. Within 2 months, Shidari attacks had decreased by 70%. Within 4 months, they had approached the Alliance for peace talks. In the council chamber where the emergency meeting had been held months earlier, General Ji-hoon now addressed a much more optimistic gathering. "The unseen war has been won," he announced, "not through superior firepower or technology, but through the unique abilities of a single species and the fear those abilities inspired." A council member raised a hand. "But General, how many Shidari ships did the human snipers actually mark?" Ji-hoon's face remained impassive. "That information remains classified." The truth, known only to Alliance High Command, was that after the initial engagement, very few Shidari ships had actually been detected and marked. It didn't matter. The fear of human snipers had accomplished what fleets of warships could not. The invisible threat had become a psychological weapon as powerful as any physical one. Instructor Seojin stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as 20 students from 12 different species attempted the precision firing exercise. The training hall of the Galactic Alliance Military Academy echoed with the soft hums and occasional cracks of practice weapons. 50 years had passed since the first human snipers had shocked the galaxy at Outpost Epsilon. What had begun as a desperate tactic had evolved into the foundation of modern galactic warfare. Humans, once considered an unremarkable species from a backwater planet, were now respected and feared throughout known space. "Your breathing is too irregular," Seojin said to a tall, reptilian cadet who was struggling to maintain his aim. "Remember, control begins with the breath." The cadet nodded, adjusting his position and slowing his breathing pattern. Seojin moved between the students, making small corrections to their stances and techniques. Though he was nearly 70 years old now, his movements remained precise and fluid. His eyes, still sharp after decades of service, missed nothing. "Focus, patience, control," he told the class as he walked among them. "These are not just tactical elements. They are a philosophy, a way of approaching not just shooting, but all challenges." A small blue-skinned Tellurian student raised her hand. "Instructor, why must we learn these techniques? My species has superior visual acuity to humans. Our technology can calculate trajectories more accurately than your brains." Seojin nodded, having heard this question many times before. Excellence in sniping is not about having the best eyes or the best calculations. It's about integration, bringing together mind, body, and environment into perfect harmony. Humans weren't born with the best tools, so we learned to use what we had perfectly. Across the capital city, in the gleaming towers of the diplomatic quarter, Ambassador Yoonju adjusted her formal uniform as she prepared to enter the Grand Assembly Hall. Today marked the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Accord between the Alliance and the Frontier Coalitions, ending 20 years of border conflicts. As she walked through the security checkpoints, she nodded to the human snipers positioned discreetly throughout the complex. Their presence was both visible and invisible. Everyone knew they were there, but few could spot them unless they wished to be seen. Inside the assembly hall, representatives from over 100 worlds had gathered. Yoonju noticed that each delegation had made the same request: human sniper security teams overlooking the proceedings. Not because they expected violence, but because of what those snipers represented: reliability, precision, safety. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. The accord was signed, and peace was established. Later, at the reception, a Vraxian diplomat approached Yoonju. "Remarkable how things change," the Vraxian said, its voice a melodic hum. 50 years ago, my people feared human snipers as demons. Now we request their protection." Yoonju smiled diplomatically. "The best weapons are the ones you never have to use." Meanwhile, on the distant frontier beyond Alliance space, a new conflict had emerged. The Vex Collective, a species of silicon-based life forms, had begun expanding aggressively into settled systems. Their technology was unlike anything the Alliance had encountered before. Major Deho studied the reports in the command center of Outpost Zeta. The latest intelligence was troubling. They've developed countermeasures specifically designed to detect humans, Lieutenant Jiam explained, displaying the data on the main screen. Anti-sniper systems that can detect human body heat, respiration patterns, even the electromagnetic signature of human nervous systems. The screen showed schematics of Vex detection grids surrounding their installations. They had clearly studied human capabilities extensively. They say they've made human snipers obsolete. Jiang continued, her voice concerned. Major Deho's weathered face broke into a smile. That's what the Vraxians thought. And the Krell. And the Shidari. He turned to the tactical display. We'll adapt. We always do. Their solution emerged after just 3 days of development. Instead of trying to hide from the detection systems, they incorporated them into their strategy. Human snipers began using remote-guided platforms, small, unmanned devices that could be controlled through neural interfaces from kilometers away. The snipers themselves remained safely beyond the Vex detection grid, while their skills were projected forward through the remote platforms. Their extraordinary hand-eye coordination, pattern recognition, and tactical thinking were applied not to physical triggers, but to neural commands that directed the platforms with the same precision. The Vex, confident in their anti-human measures, never considered that the snipers wouldn't need to be physically present to be effective. 3 weeks later, after losing 17 command centers and 32 key leaders to precision strikes that somehow bypassed all their detection systems, the Vex Admiral requested terms of surrender. The alien leader, its crystalline body reflecting the lights of the Alliance flagship's meeting room, demanded to meet the snipers who had decimated his command structure. Major Deho gestured to a row of ordinary-looking humans seated along the wall. They could have been anyone. Maintenance workers, administrative staff, civilians. Nothing marked them as the elite fighters who had brought down the Vex offensive. How is this possible? The Vex Admiral demanded, its voice a synthesized approximation of organic speech. We could detect no human presence near any of our facilities. Our systems were perfect. Because, Major Deho explained, what makes human snipers feared isn't our technology or even our physiology. It's our adaptability. Humans have always been good at changing their approach when faced with new challenges. That evening, back at the academy, a new cadet approached Instructor Seojin as he was putting away training equipment. The young human seemed nervous, but determined. Sir, is it true what they say? That a human with a rifle can bring down an empire? Seojin considered the question carefully. The myths had grown over the decades, stories spreading from world to world. Some true, many exaggerated. What's true, he said finally, is that we showed the galaxy something they hadn't seen before. That precision can overcome power, that patience can defeat speed, and that sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the largest. The cadet nodded thoughtfully as Seojin continued. Throughout history, humans have been both predators and prey, and everything in between. We learned to wait, to watch, and to strike at exactly the right moment. He looked the young cadet in the eyes. That's why human snipers are feared across the galaxy, because we remind everyone that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see coming. The cadet straightened, a new understanding visible in his expression. Now, Seojin said, let's work on your breathing technique again. Remember, focus, patience, control. The philosophy that changed the galaxy. As night fell across the capital, human snipers continued their watch from hidden positions. Most would never fire a shot in actual combat. They wouldn't need to. Their mere presence was enough to maintain the peace, a peace built not on fear alone, but on respect for a species that had turned its limitations into strengths and changed the art of warfare forever.